For decades, business-to-business sales relied on a rigid, linear funnel: push high volumes of product into the top and extract large orders at the bottom. Under modern market pressures, that structure has collapsed. Standard selling activities used to focus entirely on the product or service being exchanged. Now, survival in B2B markets requires abandoning that product-centric pitch in favor of a highly complex consultative model that integrates directly into the client's actual business operations. 4 macro forces overlap to dismantle traditional vendor relationships. Rapid globalization and information technology advances commoditized standard products. Consequently, the value creation process shifted, altering purchasing behaviors. Buyers now demand true operational integration over simple procurement. Because of these overlapping pressures, standard volume discounts and traditional account management tactics are completely obsolete when dealing with a company's largest and most vital clients. The required structural replacement for that shattered linear funnel is key account management, or KAM. This is a systematic, circular approach to planning and managing mutually beneficial partnerships. KAM discards standard sales tactics. It redirects the supplier's focus away from pushing individual product lines, forcing them instead to analyze the customer's overall business and engineer added value far beyond the core deliverable. Implementing this structure is a high-cost, high-stakes organizational decision. It is an expensive capital outlay that generates revenue returns over the long term, making it entirely unsuited for quick-fix financial bumps. Surviving modern B2B markets dictates that suppliers abandon transactional relationships and commit to deep, structural co-investment with a select group of priority partners. Before a supplier can approach a single key account, they must dismantle and rebuild their internal corporate architecture to support the model. This graphic outlines 5 principles leadership must embed for KAM. First, define strategy and structures to bypass standard hierarchies. Next, bundle product and service solutions to co-create value. The people pillar requires entirely distinct reward systems. Finally, knowledge capabilities ensure systems monitor these complex accounts. Standard pipeline metrics and volume-based commission structures actively sabotage this architecture. They incentivize short-term product pushing, which destroys the trust and consultative integration required to manage a key account. Without systematically embedding all 5 of these foundational pillars, an organization is simply applying an expensive label to standard account management and absorbing the cost without the return. Because executing KAM carries an extreme financial and operational burden, suppliers must deploy a ruthless, exclusionary selection criteria to filter potential accounts. This requires a strict 3-stage critical selection filter to disqualify standard accounts. Stage 1 assesses objective account attractiveness, looking for massive revenue potential. Stage 2 forces the supplier to assess their competitive position, objectively evaluating their market leverage against rival suppliers. Without dominant positioning, a supplier bleeds resources on an account ultimately secured by a stronger competitor. Stage 3 introduces the client's perspective, measuring their actual willingness to co-invest in a partnering relationship. The client must demonstrate skin in the game. This means a contractual willingness to commit operating capital, share highly proprietary data, and dedicate internal personnel to the joint venture. If a highly profitable, massive buyer refuses this level of integration, they fail the final stage. They remain a standard account managed by traditional volume sales teams. Key accounts are never unilaterally selected by the supplier. They are mutually opted into by partners willing to share severe operational risk. Once a target survives that strict filtration process, strategic theory shifts to physical execution, dictating what the actual KAM investment portfolio entails. Resource allocation between a standard and key account becomes aggressively asymmetric. The supplier executes organizational investments, dedicating cross-functional teams to this client. Capital is deployed for specialized people development, and core offerings undergo heavy adaptation to capture the exact needs of this account. In practice, these actions can escalate into extreme physical investments, such as a supplier physically relocating their distribution warehouse to sit geographically adjacent to the customer's operations. These represent massive, heavy capital expenditures that permanently alter the physical footprint of the supplier's entire logistics network. True key account management requires an asymmetric capital outlay. the supplier intentionally sacrifices short-term margins in order to permanently wire their operations into the client's infrastructure. If implementing CAM requires massive short-term capital and severe resource drains, leadership faces a tracking problem. How do you measure success in the months or years before the long-term revenue hits the ledger? Standard revenue trackers are replaced by a holistic metric known as customer equity. This is calculated through 3 distinct variables. First is value equity, an objective, rational judgment of the firm's offering, centered strictly around price, quality, and convenience. The second is brand equity. This denotes the customer's subjective appraisal, representing the intangible value your organization generates beyond the physical product itself. The third is relationship equity. This metric tracks the customer's ongoing willingness to remain in the relationship, specifically to secure intangible benefits, such as shared knowledge and joint insight generation. Maximizing these 3 distinct forms of equity, combined with foundational trust and commitment, drives the actual quantifiable performance of the key account. This diagram outlines the compounding cycle of benefits generated when performance is achieved. Dedicated teams reduce operational conflict, facilitating increased information sharing and data transparency. That transparency secures customer commitment and loyalty, generating the retention and customer share required to finance customer-driven innovation. When rigorous structural selection meets heavy, targeted co-investment, the standard vendor-client dynamic dissolves. It becomes a self-reinforcing engine of shared competitive advantage.